she was now 6, is in prep, and the 4-year-old is now in kinder, that the experience would be any different than the beautiful flow it had been the previous year. So I turned up to they'd had their first 2 drop-off days with mum and dad, and I was doing the 3rd day. And I hadn't even considered that they might have anxiety about it, about their new routines and their new structure and their new positions. Anyway, so, you know, I went through our usual, we had our breakfast, and then I asked them to put their uniforms on, and they just flat out refused. They were giggling and they were running around and playing chasey and, you know, taking off their pajamas so that they didn't have any clothes on, and they're going, "Chase us, Mel." They're going, "Come on, play chasey." They're going, "Chase us, Mel." And I'm like, we're already a few minutes late. And I myself was starting to get like the anxiety, and no, but we're going to be late. And I was like, but no. And I noticed that I was having a very triggered experience by them not complying and falling into what I thought and felt they should be doing. And initially I tried to be a little firmer, you know, like we need to get ready, we need to get there on time. And that made them get louder and sillier, you know, and gigglier. So I went, okay. And then I tried to explain why we needed to be on time, forgetting that a 4-year-old and 6-year-old have no concept of time and don't care. And that didn't work either. And I decided to just surrender to what was going on and decide that it didn't matter what time. I decided, you know what? We'll get there when we get there. And I sat down and they started plaiting my hair, like trying to plait my hair. And I realized as I sat down and surrendered and they started doing my hair that the thoughts I was having about, oh, but Charlotte's going to walk in late to, you know, her first week of prep and everyone's going to be looking at her. I realized that was me. I went, oh, that's not, she doesn't look very anxious about, this is my anxiety. And I realized that was my thoughts about me walking into class late. And I surrendered to, me surrendering allowed me to make that connection and have that realization and release it. And once I realized that and released it, and then I said, okay, after you do my hair, how about you put your uniforms on? They went, okay. It shifted like that because I wasn't operating from that space of anxiety anymore, and I was owning my own trigger. It was opportunity to release it and allow myself to become the safe container for the children again, because obviously whilst I'm having this experience, I'm not the safe container. It was such a huge moment for me, that learning and connecting with my inner child, like you've talked about, Carol. And this is probably a common experience, I imagine, right now, being at home in the 4 walls together with the limitations, and, you know, there's more opportunity for having our stuff triggered, and more, the temptation to want to be in control is probably stronger as well, to get things back in order so that we feel like we know what's happening and we feel like we're in control. But I found that doing the opposite is what allowed me to get back into the driver's seat and in control, so to speak. And so maybe what we could, did you guys want to add anything before I move on to our next?
Just a thought.
Yeah.
Just as you were talking, and when Jake finished, what popped up for me was the important step of forgiveness. Is, you know, like what you were saying, Melissa, such a beautiful story and picture. And how many millions of times do we go through that with children? And this thing about trying to control the uncontrollable. And what's driving you is the anxiety based on your own experience. You actually want to protect them from your own experience that you had. You want to protect the little girl from coming in late at school and everyone's shaming her or whatever, or the teacher. And so it comes from a good place, actually. You know, your intention is one of protection, but then it immediately slips into control. And then whatever this child is doing is sabotaging your control. And so I think the little thing that I hear, I think, happen for you, and what we need to make space for is to forgive ourselves for both things. Forgiving ourselves for maybe making the mistake when we were little, which got us into trouble, but also forgive ourselves for feeling like we want to be in control, but we're not. So it's like both ways that you look. As like, I'm in this stuff. It's really hard. I acknowledge it. There's a lot of pain in me. I love this child. I want to protect the child. I wish she would stop doing that, but I understand it's because it's unsettling me. I forgive myself for that. So you've got to go through that whole thing and then say, okay, so now I'm bare, now I'm naked, lost all the protection I had. What needs to happen? And that's when you surrender. You got nothing to lose anymore because you've lost it all anyway. So I think that element of forgiveness is so vital to us being able to transform things. Yeah. Again and again. Yeah.
Definitely. And the funny thing is we got there. I'll just mute you so we don't have the, yeah. And we were late, but so was everyone else because it's the first week of prep. It's like what really matters, you know. And what else we wanted to move towards thinking, discussing today and connecting with and thinking about was connecting with the vision of the dream of what it is, what our vision is for the future. What sort of world do we want to create, and for the children? Like when we connect with our inner child, what sort of world do we want to experience and create? And how can we, first of all, how can we make space for that vision, or connect with that vision that's already within us? Even if you maybe don't realize it, it's maybe there waiting to be acknowledged. And then also, how can we practically connect with it, like Jake has talked about in one of our chats so beautifully, bringing it forward to start being experienced now. For me, maybe I can start. Part of the reason I actually created the Australian Natural Nanny Network is because of that vision for the future, because the way that I operate and the way that I work with children is in a way that I feel has actually been very intimately linked with my own inner journey of transformation and development, and connecting with the kind of life I want to live and the kind of world I want to live in. And that flows through to the way I work with children. So empowering them to connect with who they are and what's most important to them and what they're most passionate about. And I feel that the more we're able to raise children in this way, the more impact we have on the kind of world we're co-creating. And that world, my vision of the world that I would love to be living in, is one where we are the freedom of the expression of our humanity. And that every person on the planet is connected with their mission and their vision and their sense of purpose, and are doing exactly what they feel most fulfilled by. Yeah, that's really it for me. And having this discussion is part of pulling that forward.
Can I jump in? And then Carol, you go. Yeah. There's I think, what you're talking about, Melissa, there's a prefigurative practice in the feminist world where we look at utopia, and we bring it forward to now. And I guess part of that is having a shared vision, or, of what that utopia is. So, individually, but then sharing that with each other, and finding, oh, you have this vision too, and actually it's the realization, deeper realization is that it's a human vision that we all share at a deeper level, and then working out the barriers to have that happen, and to make it happen now. And you can, the tricky bit there is that you can get bogged down in the barriers. You can find there's a law against that, so we better not do that, or we better spend the next 10 years fighting against that law so we can do that thing. But actually prefigurative is doing it now, not regardless of the law exactly, but doing it now, having those vision come alive right now, whatever form that takes. And then as the barriers or blockages or oppression comes up, then you're reflecting that barrier against this utopian vision, and then the barriers lose their power. And I hope that's not the best way of explaining it, but this is the way we're moving through this podcast, is to bring these ideas up and to crystallize these dreams into a reality together. And I think that's the idea, is that if the listeners can comment or chime in on how they can see their utopia come into existence now, to help us to make it happen, to re-energize after all the restrictions and oppression that we've been experiencing, to get back to that shared vision. And the other thing that comes up for me in this is this hope, which Rudolf Steiner talks about, of moving towards this idea of a soul consciousness. So moving away from an I consciousness and acting as an individual, like the iPad and the iMac and the Mikey and there's so many marketing things that, just for you, tailor-made for you. But moving away from that to having this soul consciousness, this is my utopian vision, a soul consciousness where I am empathizing with Carol and Melissa and the people tuning in, and the people in this house. And you can just make bubbles upon bubbles of how you're tuning into how things are happening right now. And we've already got this. Actually, it's Friday today when we're recording, and you can tell it's Friday even though I had to double check because I hadn't been keeping track of the calendar. I was like, it feels like Friday. Is it Friday? Oh yeah, it's Friday. You can tell it's Friday because there's less emails that come through, because everyone else is like, it's Friday. You're not starting a project on Friday necessarily. I'm not sending emails with, can you get back to me on this data analysis or whatever on Friday. That's just not etiquette. You can tell it's Friday. The other thing, you can always tell when it's a public holiday. I mean, there's obvious signs, like there's less cars on the road, but you can tell that everyone is chilling out, in your area. Or especially when you remember in the first, in March when it first came on the news about the virus, how much anxiety was in the air. It was super strong, and it was impossible not to feel it. There's just this fear. And by now, we've come to get to know it a bit better. And stage 4 has been more like less fear and anxiety, and more like resignation. Yeah, and that's felt as well. So I can already feel that soul consciousness developing, in that we can feel what's happening on a community level. And the idea is that we can start to expand that to a global level where decisions are easily made based on how we're feeling as a collective human species, and then connecting it to the earth and the universe and all those things as well. So that's my vision, is this soul consciousness where we don't, I can empathize so deeply with others, and especially children, that it just becomes natural what the next step is to take, or the decision or the words at that moment. It just becomes natural or intuitive, which is even better.